Good afternoon. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. Welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun. And thank you so much. I'm talking about the cost of living. I've been talking about the cost of living for 10 months, beginning last December. I'm now looking at Kenya in terms of the cost of living crisis, because Kenya is potentially one of the richest countries in the world, one of the richest countries in the world, and developmentally, in actual sense, also one of the richest countries in Africa, perhaps also in the world in many ways. The problem with Kenya and Africa, as well as the global economy in all the rest of the continent, is capitalism. Capitalism actually gives more money and wealth into the hands of the few, taking the wealth out of the heart of the many. It is such as written in the Bible, if you're a Christian, where it says, the more you have, the more you are added, and the less you have, the little you have, it will be taken away for you. To him who has shall more be given, and to him who has not, even what he has will be taken away and given to the one who has a lot. And it seems to me capitalism and capitalists have taken scripture literally and actually taken this mantra to the furthest extreme, such that today in the world, in the global economy, Kenya included, under capitalism, you find the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And that's why I'm trying to look at Kenya holistically to establish that Kenya is actually one of the wealthiest countries in the world, potentially, and Africa being potentially one of the richest continents in the world, and yet it suffers the worst form of the cost of living crisis. The cost of living crisis is caused by poverty, and poverty is created by capitalism, which actually concentrates wealth into the hands of the few, taking the same wealth out of the hands of the many. I will be repeating this point over and again because it's fundamental. Different individuals give different propositions, but the proposition is clear. Capitalism is a system for doing businesses. It's not a system for doing welfare system. Welfare system is an intervention by the state via capital, via public sector, providing public services. And these often help mitigate the extremity with capitalism is to give more, to take some wealth from the rich and give it to the poor. Right now, what is needed for the 95% of the population who are actually poor, who work for a living across the globe, whether they know it or not, they are poor. If you work for a living, if you're small and medium businesses, you're a poor person. Because in a crisis, you fall into poverty straight away. That's the definition of poverty. And experts may tell you something else, but don't listen to them. You can listen to them at your own risk. But if you work for a living and you work as an employed, self-employed person, running your business as a small and medium business, you're poor. Because you depend on credit, you depend on the state. If there is a crisis, especially like now, the cost of living crisis, you have to depend on the state, which unfortunately is closing down the public sector, which is supposed to mitigate the impact created often under the capitalistic system. When there is a crisis, the many who are poor suffer poverty, to the fact that with the multiplicity of crises across the globe, you have now a situation where there are so many people, actually 95% of people are languishing in poverty, not being able to get out of poverty, never to mention accessing wealth. That's why I've been talking about this here, information. I'm so happy I chose to do that. We are a small channel. We are 10 months old into the project. My channel was created in 2012, but I did not do anything in it. I started working here 10 months ago, and we are making progress. and it is slow, and I'm so excited. Thank you everybody who have been subscribing to my channel, everybody who have been watching, continue watching. We are going to look at Kenya, how rich it is, and then the problem in Kenya with capitalism and also failed and democratic system. And when I talk of failure in Kenya, I will talk about failure in Africa and the globe. Because see, in Africa mainly we practice an extreme form of dictatorship, often military system, or even a civil one with leaders manipulating the system, the law, to actually rig election and also avoid competitive competing for votes and power. So they, if once you're in power, you actually use every avenue to remain in power for as long as you can. So we are going to talk about the transition to multi-party democracy in Kenya. Watch this video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed, share with family and friends the videos, and click the notification bell, leave a comment below to let me know what you're thinking. Now, we saw under Jomo Kenyatta how dictatorial he was. He actually practiced dictatorship, civil dictatorship, so to speak. But behind every civil dictatorship is militarism, including in the Western power. So when we talk about dictatorship, we in the air we are talking about military dictatorship anyway. Because, you know, at least at face value, it may look like civil dictatorship, which it is, but in fact, the power behind any government and the state is actually the military system, which is actually what maintains world governments in America, in the developed world, in Africa, in the rest of the world. In a format of dictatorship, there is no freedom, there is no democracy in a classical sense of the word. And democracy is supposed to mean freedom, and there is no freedom, there is no peace for the wicked. Because we have failed culturally, and I'll say this over and again, that, you know, developmentally at least we have wealth and we have technology, engineering, but culturally we have failed culturally to value humanity and to actually achieve peace. And I believe that we can actually pay more attention to value humanity, practicing cultural economy through education, through learning, and also changing the way we're seeing our attitude. We have been saying this again and again, and it's so important. It is so important that I have to see this before we even go any far. So we're going back to Kenya now to see what is happening there, what was happening, and what continues to happen. It happens now, and then in 1991, Kenya transitioned to a multi-party political system after 26 years of single-party rule. When we say multi-party, we mean people compete for parties. There are different political parties competing for votes. In practice, the party of the ruling government has absolute power. So the meaning of multipartyism is actually nonsensical in practice. And we have seen it in developed world, we have seen it in developing countries, developing world in Africa, Kenya. So every time you talk of multipartyism, you know that is a political rubbish, because nothing like that exists in the world. It's just the window dressing. It's a pretense. Well, people think to make people think, you know, to fool people to think there is something. No, that's democracy. Democracy does not exist. But and as long as there's freedom, as long as there's the cost of living crisis, we cannot say, even open our mouth even to talk of democracy. How can there be democracy if there is a cost of living crisis in a world which swims in wealth? Look at the world today. The world today is awash in wealth. It is actually evil, it is wizardry, it is actually the behavior on alien being in power. People who behave like aliens, people who are actually subhuman, who are culturally, so in ignorant, culturally, they don't know the value of humanity. They only know wealth and power and pride and pomp and pomposity. They are actually very worthless. Humanity, they have to change. Because you see, it doesn't matter how wealthy or how powerful you are. If you don't understand the value of humanity, then you are nothing. You are just, as good as an alien. Even an alien, if they come to respect humanity, they are going to be a better human than a human species who do not respect people. It is disrespectful for a world which is actually very rich, especially with the developed world extremely rich, for there to be a crisis like the cost of living. The cost of living should not be there. It is a result of disrespect for people, for the 95% of the population who work for living. And this actually stop. This is the purpose of this video. So let's go back to looking at how Kenya fared since 1991 under a man called Arap Moi, Daniel Arap Moi. If you know Daniel Arap Moi, if you're from Kenya, leave a comment below and let me know what you know so that we carry on with the conversation. So in 1991, Kenya transitioned into a multi-party political system after 26 years of single-party rule. On the 28th of October 1992, Moi dissolved parliament 5 months before the end of his term. That is actually typical. You introduced multipartyism and 6 months, 6 months, of just 5 months into the rule, you dissolve it. Why did he do that? As a result, preparation began for all election seats in parliament as well as the president. As a result, preparation began. They didn't dissolve parliament for election, probably. God bless Kenya. The election was scheduled to take place on the 7th December 1992, but delays led to its postponement to the 29th of December, 29th of December, the same year, 1992. Now, if you are elected, you're supposed to stay in power for 5 years, not 5 months. First of all, it's a waste of public money. It's corrupt. It's a form of violence and cultural ignorance, which actually President such as Arap Moi and the rest of the people actually practice. But it is unfair to target one country because this is a global problem. One country can no longer solve it because it's created by capitalism. Corruption is actually promoted by capitalism, which is actually focusing on wealth and refusing to understand the value of culture, which is actually valuing humanity. It's as simple as that. And it's not going to change unless we change to access our cultural resources, to put people first, over and above everything else. I will never stop saying it. Apart from Kano, the ruling party, other parties represented in the election include Ford Kenya and Ford Asili. This election was marked by large-scale intimidation of opponents and harassment of election officials. This is a very familiar theme in Uganda and in Kenya, Tanzania. Especially Kenya and Tanzania are more corrupt Kenya and Uganda are more corrupt in East Africa than most of the countries, because as much as other people are also rude and corrupt, and corruption in Kenya probably succeed elsewhere, and even in Uganda. Uganda probably worse than Kenya anyway. But this is the same everywhere because the corruption is running the world. In the developed world, like I said, it's repeating it over and over. So it resulted in an economic crisis propagated by ethnic violence, as the president was accused of rigging electoral results to sit in power. The story of rigging election will never stop in Africa. It's just it's part and parcel of the continent, and we should get used to this. This election was a turning point of Kenya, as it signified the beginning of the end of Moi's leadership and the rule of Kano. So we see change approaching in Kenya. Moi retained the presidency and George Soitoti became vice president. Although he held on the power, Kano won 100 seats and lost 88 seats to the state opposition party. The 1993 election marked the beginning of multi-party politics after more than 25 years of Kano rule. Kano dominated Kenyan politics for far too long, and in theory, multi-partyism actually came, but like I said previously from the start, that multi-partyism or single-partyism dictatorship is always the rule of thumb. There is rigging of election for the man or woman in power, mostly men actually. especially in Africa, but also seen in the white countries. The same, well, more of the same. The following skirmishes in the aftermath of the election, 5,000 people were killed and other 75,000 displaced from their homes. In the next 5 years, many political alliances were formed in preparation for the next election. In 1994, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga died, and several coalitions joined his Ford Kenya party to form a new party, United National Democratic Alliance in Kenya. This party was plagued with disagreements. In 1995, Richard Leakey formed the Safina Party, but he was denied registration until November 1997. In 1996, Kano revised the constitution to allow Moi to remain president for another term. The idea of changing constitution by the party in power is not new in Africa, especially East Africa. It's happening in Uganda. Uganda changed its constitution twice to allow the incumbent to remain in power. Even there are rumors that even if you win election, the military take over, do a military coup immediately after election and give it back to President Museveni and the NRM. And that, some people say that was what happened in the last election, but because there is a cover up from the state, you don't know what they're doing. They operate in secret, and also the Western powers are actually backing President Museveni. Most African countries are actually put in power by the Western power, who are so corrupt that they only think about reform. Reform means privatization and promotion of capitalism. I mean, it doesn't matter how dangerous a president is in the world, whether he's in Africa or in other continents. As long as they are promoting capitalism, they are allowed to stay. Whether you are Ukraine, Russia, or Niger, or Israel, or Hamas, you name it. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are doing. It doesn't matter how many people you kill, or even if you act like a terrorist in government. As long as you do what the Western world want you to do, or the global government, especially the developed world with the most power, wanting to promote capitalism. The global agenda is the only thing they think about. They don't think about people, and that should change, because otherwise we are going to go extinct. If we cannot achieve peace, we are going to go extinct. So we have to really stand out in the value of people. Simple message, so challenging to change, but I have to talk about it. And it's best if you listen to me, and if you don't listen to me, it's okay, but it's not okay. His win was strongly criticized by his major opponents, Kibaki and Odinga, as fraudulent. Same old story, same new Kenya, same new Africa. Following his win, Moi was constitutionally barred from another presidential term. Beginning in 1998, he attempted to influence the country's succession politics to have Uhuru Kenyatta elected in the 2002 election. So if you don't rule, the person you like should rule. Even if you are not in power, you still try to influence somebody who you think you would prefer to rule other than yourself. So that is also the same old story in Africa. But also, to be fair, it's a human condition around the world. There's corruption, the cultural failure, disrespect for humans, there's respect for integrity. People behave like wild animals. It is a dangerous, it's a very, very poor survey on humanity. It's human nature, regardless of which country you are, whether in Kenya or in Europe, in Africa, or wherever you are, Asia. The culture needs to be revisited and learning about some color. Let us look at the presidents of Mwai Kibaki, and also look at the man himself in 2002 Kenyan general election and 2007 Kenyan general election. Moi's plan to be replaced by Uhuru Kenyatta failed, and Mwai Kibaki, running for the opposition coalition National Rainbow Coalition (NAC), was elected president. So we talk about continuity and change in Kenya. which is some element of credit should be given to Kenya. Because, it's probably the only country in East Africa to do that effectively without extreme form of controversy, including rigging election, losing election, and the army actually taking over power and giving it back to the guy who lost. That's rumored. It's rumored in Uganda, but rumor is very important in Africa. And it is also very important around the world because they operate behind the scenes. They are full of secrecy. Even if they murder 50% of the population, they don't know. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but there is so much evil now. But there's hope. If there wasn't hope, I wouldn't be sitting here talking. There's hope because I believe we can change. If we didn't change, there wouldn't be hope. Because we have gone really in a bad way in the world. There is a lot of distress. People are suffering with so much wealth. Wealth is treated as God of the modern world. That's not true. Because if there is any God, there should be people. And people are not even God for us who are believers in God. But if it comes to if you choose between human and wealth, which one is going to be your God? You're better off actually choosing a person. Because you see, wealth is for people, people is not for wealth. We look for wealth, we look for people, look after people. This information must go out. And if you're listening, subscribe to this channel, support it, and continue with the conversation. If we call this in conversation, let us start on with it. In 2005, Kenya rejected a plan to replace the 1963 independence constitution with a new one. As a result, the election of 2007 took place following the procedure set by the old constitution. These are actually stories from Kenya, but my purpose of telling this story is to demonstrate to the world that Kenya is a country which is normal and suffering from the cost of living and because of corruption and the capitalism. All these stories are actually controversial. I'm not creating them, I'm not making them up, they are just there. Everywhere in the world, not just in Kenya. Wherever you look, you will find controversy and human wrong because of cultural failure. The value of this program is actually identify what is causing corruption, cultural failure. And culture means, respecting humanity, prioritizing humanity over and above everything else. This is a simple concept, but it has a profound impact. It could be the one, if adopted, to teach, even in school, to teach in society. If it is adopted by willing government, could bring peace. I believe that. That's what I'm talking about. So the main opposition leader, Raila Odinga, claimed the election was rigged and that he was the rightfully elected president. Very familiar. You don't even know if election are rigged or not, but you just assume it is rigged because the environment is fertile for corruption. So if the environment is corrupt or corruption is conducive rather. If the environment is corruption conducive, the chances are that there is going to be corruption more likely than not that there's going to be corruption. So in the ensuing violence, 1,500 people were killed and another 600,000 internally displaced, making worse post-election violence in Kenya. To stop the death and displacement of people, Kibaki and Odinga agreed to work together, with the latter taking the position of the Prime Minister. So if we begin to think that power and politics is more important than human, then we kill 1,500 people. And that is really rude. Even if you are rich or poor, to take a human life, thinking a human life is worth less than actually political power. And also displacing people, 6.6 million people, because displacement can kill even more. And therefore, the record of the death may not even be properly calculated. And this is why I'm saying we need really cultural reform in our worlds, wherever we are respecting human life first, over and above even wealth and power. It may sound stupid, but it is not. Believe me, it is our only medicine, if I may say, implemented to bring peace. Because without peace, humanity is going to go extinct. And I will repeat this point so that we don't forget it. So this made Odinga the second Prime Minister of Kenya. In July 2010, Kenya partnered with other East African countries to form the new East African Common Market within the East African Community. EAC is part of globalization, as I mentioned earlier in the other videos. It is also consistent with the organs of the African Union, AU, and also in Europe, the European Union and the rest of the world federating to form sub-unions, and ultimately to bring these sub-unions in different continents, regions of the world together to form one big union known as the Global Union or Globalization. Globalized world is promoting capitalism, an extreme version of capitalism, so let us brace ourselves for dangers. Unless we now begin the process of mitigating capitalism by promoting the cultural economy and also using this respect for humanity, the care we are to give humanity, the value we should put into the lives of people, to create a public sector fit for the future, to protect the majority of the population who are actually not millionaires or billionaires from extinction, from poverty, and from other forms of violence. And if we don't do that, if we don't bring peace sooner rather than later, the poor, the majority will die first, but ultimately humanity will go extinct, and that is not fun. That's not funny at all, and we need to pay attention to that. I'm not really going to stop talking about this, and I'm so excited. Subscribe to my channel and then share the video with family and friends, and let me know your thoughts, and leaving comments, click the notification bell and support this process. So, in mid-2011, two consecutive rainy seasons precipitated the worst drought in East Africa in 60 years. So we talk about poverty, and this is consistent with a crisis-prone capitalistic system, and including the cost of living crisis. The northwestern Turkana region was especially affected, with the local schools shut down as a result. These are form of crisis consistent with capitalism. That's why we need the public sector and the public services to intervene during crisis, because this is very common under capitalism. Because with this capitalism, there is always been crisis. Without capitalism, there will always be crisis. With any economic system, there will always be crisis. That's why with any form of economic, especially capitalism, which is the only economic system now existing globally, we need the public sector to provide public service when it is needed to get people out of poverty, and also to deal with moments of crisis. Thank you for watching this video, and let us carry on. I'll subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and share the video with family and friends, and let me know your thoughts. The crisis was reportedly over by early 2012 because of coordinated relief efforts. So we talk about relief efforts, giving food, energy, probably, and money. My view is that in Africa, at least the welfare system should be created to provide money if people need money, to provide jobs if people need jobs, to provide healthcare, to provide housing, to provide transportation, public transport. These are all welfare systems. Some people think welfare system is only about benefit or money given by the state, which is good, which is actually the best form of welfare support. But employment is extremely important. Except employment under capitalism is not achievable. Full employment, especially, is not achievable. Especially now with technology, there are going to be less and less wealth. That is when people in the middle class of society will begin to feel the reality of unemployment and becoming poor, and realize that they're actually not rich but they are poor. in the world, you are either rich or poor. There is no middle ground. If you work for a living, you are not in, you are maybe in the middle class, but that doesn't make you rich. You need to remember this. You are not being stunted, but you are being alerted to survive. Life is about survival. That's why it is important to understand what I'm trying to talk about. I'm so excited. And thank you, YouTube. Thank you, my fans. And thank you, everyone who have been participating on this system, this platform, YouTube, so that I had this opportunity to speak about things I care about. And I will carry on until we get to the end if it is needed, because every good project must come to an end at some point. I'm not talking about the end now, I'm just talking about carrying on. Thank you so much, everybody who have been participating. So aid agencies subsequently shifted their emphasis to recover initiatives, including digging irrigation canals and distributing plant seeds. So this is some development strategies carried out by aid agencies, but these are actually capitalistic in the sense that they concentrate wealth in the hands of a few and not in the many. And ideally, Africans should be actually given tractors. Every unit of an African village should be given a tractor, should be given agricultural implements, capital implements for ordinary people to run their own life by using that land to grow food. And every government should use the public sector, not private sector, to support these people with fertilizer, seed, and agricultural technology and information. And this has to be done now throughout Africa. Also, the second thing about, apart from agriculture, we need to actually give money to African government, including Kenyan government, to build houses to every African, beginning from the very poorest to the one who are actually in the middle class, who work for a living. And those who run small and medium business, it needs to be done now, to start now as part of the process of regenerating our worlds by accessing knowledge of our culture and developing humanity using public sector and provide public services in housing. And this should be done in the developed world also. People who work for a living, the working class, the lower and the middle class, who cannot buy houses unless they borrow money, build houses and given houses for free. And this is possible because of the amount of wealth we have in the world. The only thing missing actually is the political will and also the social will, where rich people and also poor people do not seem to be care about people, because the poor people are also negligent. They should be talking to the government every day. And if I can talk every day, everybody can talk. If 95% billions and billions of poor people across the globe, if I start talking with one globe, with one voice, like I talk, you see, changes will come within 10 years. Everybody in the world who works for a living and who is poor will be built a house. They should have, hospital providing free service. If the government cannot provide it publicly, then it should be given to communities to run this as community health care system, which is actually access free, built by the communities, families, and communities, which is a social welfare system provided by the communities and families. This can be done beginning now, and there should not be delay. Everybody who listens to this video should take this opportunity to think about this. This is doable. This is the main solution to the crisis, such as the cost of living crisis. Because the cost of living is not just about energy or food. It's about income and low pay, poor working conditions, and poverty created by poor working conditions, lack of employment, unstable employment. People cannot find work in Africa. People cannot find work in the developed world. Only a few. The many are languishing in poverty. They have to sell in the market, and the market system should be actually upgraded. The market system in Africa is a disgrace. Is a sign of poverty. Poor people really suffer in selling things in the market. If they cannot sell anything in the market, they should actually give this money, this product to an agency which can actually buy it of them from the farm and sell it wherever they want to sell. But food is not necessary to be sold, or it should be distributed for free. Government should, if people actually grow food, the government should buy it and put it into a store and distribute it freely for those who cannot help themselves. Even people who actually cultivate are actually food poor, because they cannot even produce enough to feed their family. They still have to sell to, to take the children to the hospital. They have to sell the food they should be eating, to send their children to school. This is a social failure in Kenya, in Africa, across the globe. And if, the government should change immediately and support farmers to produce enough food for themselves. The rest which is left should be sold to the rich, who do not actually produce food. So the rich should buy if the poor need the money. But the poor shouldn't be needing money, because the government should be taxing the rich and giving the money to the poor. And the agriculture should be organized as a community program within every unit of a village or of a community, so that food are actually produced and stored and distributed freely to within that community. By the support, government should provide capital support, including money, equipment, tractors, combined harvesters, irrigation system, fertilizers, seeds, and all the technology like grafting to produce fruits and vegetables, greenhouses to produce vegetables. All these are doable and achievable globally within 1 year because of advancement in technology. Solar power should be provided by the global government to actually support African government to produce solar energy to every community in Africa. There should be nobody buying energy from anybody. Everybody in the world should be energy independent, should be food independent, because we have turned energy and food into a commercial product to enrich the poor, the rich who are already rich, to enrich the super rich who actually throw the money to the pigs. They actually throw the money, they even burn the money in fire, because they are so rude, they are so violent. They don't want to give their wealth to anyone, and the system is so violent. People are so confused. We need to revisit our culture and bring the changes now and not tomorrow. This applies to Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the globe. And thank you for watching this far, and thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. The comment below. In August 2010, Kenya held a referendum and passed a new constitution which limited presidential power and devolved the central government. And devolution is not new. These are actually constitutional processes which are maybe good or good. But whatever we do, if we don't revisit our culture, whatever we do will fail, including constitutional reform, including political and economic reform, will not work, because see, what we need is actual respect. Respect for people. This will bring peace, and once there is peace, there is going to be sanity. The war will reduce, and all the global resources will be focused on welfare, security, and all these other things. War is now destroying the world, and it's a threat. Different types of wars. War by the rich against the poor, for fear of the poor actually getting their wealth. All this complexity happens when people actually don't understand their culture. They fail to value humanity. They fail to be able to a peaceful relationship. And this must change, and it will change, because we are humans. We are not going to go anywhere. And it's the case of changing the way we think, is embracing new ideas about valuing relationship, family relationship, social relationship, and political, and all area of relations in society. We are relationally poor because our culture is broken. Our culture is broken. Our cultural understanding is inferior. We need to revisit our culture to learn new knowledge and bring change and bring peace. Following the passage of the new constitution, Kenya became a presidential representative democratic republic. This is a very complicated but very interesting title, whereby the president of Kenya is both head of state and head of government and of a multi-party system. We have that in Uganda, which is either good or bad, but all the same, it's not going to bring any peace unless we visit to understand, reform culturally, other than developmentally. Developmentally, we are doing okay. And constitutional reform is an example of development. And economic management, which is actually the market system, is a form of development, which is a success. But what has failed is actually respecting humanity, which has brought shame to the great and the not so great in society. We are all in this together. We need to really revisit our culture and start the process of peace. The new constitution also states that executive powers are exercised by the executive branch of government headed by the president, who chairs the cabinet composed of people chosen from outside parliament. This was political reform, then political and administrative reform. Administrative reform actually refers to executive systems, which actually what they are saying here. Legislative power is vested exclusively in parliament. Legislative power is actually the capacity to be able to create laws and policy, and is open in parliament. The judiciary is independent of the executive and the legislature. This is the doctrine of the separation of power, which is supposed in theory to bring a semblance of democracy. Actually, when powers are separated, the judiciary is actually the law, the legal instrumentation, and the institutions and systems. So let us look at the Kenyatta presidency. We'll talk about Uhuru Kenyatta and the presidency of Uhuru Kenyatta. Uhuru Kenyatta is the son of the first president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. This happened actually in 2014. After Kibaki tenure ended in 2013, Kenya held its first general elections after the 2010 constitution had been passed. Uhuru Kenyatta won in a disputed election result, leading to a petition by the opposition leader Raila Odinga. More of the same. The Supreme Court upheld the election results, and Kenyatta began his term with William Ruto as deputy president. Despite this ruling, the Supreme Court and the head of the Supreme Court was seen as powerful institutions that could check the powers of the president. In 2017, Kenyatta won a second term in office in another disputed election, more of the same. Odinga again petitioned the results in the Supreme Court, accusing the independent electoral and boundary commission of mismanagement of the election, and Kenyatta and his party of rigging elections. The Supreme Court overturned the election results in what became a landmark ruling in Africa, and one of the very few in the world in which the results of the presidential election were annulled. That is actually to show you that corruption is a dangerous thing. This ruling solidified the position of the Supreme Court as an independent body. Consequently, Kenya had a second round of election for the presidential position, in which Kenyatta emerged the winner after Odinga refused to participate, citing irregularities. In March 2018, a historic handshake between Kenyatta and his long-term opposition Odinga signaled a period of reconciliation followed by economic growth and increased stability. Economic growth and political stability, as well as economic stability, may occur. It is a developmental factor of progress, but we still need to revisit our cultural component of the progress, cultural economy, respecting people, re-educating our leaders, and re-educating our society to respect humanity as a priority, to bring peace and to get rid of violence and theft and all sorts of rude behavior where the state and the power that be keep the majority of the population deliberately in poverty, so that they can actually manipulate power and control wealth, the weaponized wealth as a tool of oppression and slavery. This is actually backwardness, culturally, and we can no longer afford to do that. Between 2019 and 2021, Kenyatta and Odinga combined efforts to promote major changes to Kenyan constitution labeled the Building Bridges Initiative BBI, Building Bridges Initiative BBI, saying that their efforts were to improve inclusion and overcome the country's winner-take-all election system that often resulted in post-election violence. This is actually scrambling for power. It's actually fighting over power. It's not peaceful at all. It's just giving evidence of how desperate we have become in society. This is because we have actually closed our eyes to see the major component of progress, the cultural economy, which is actually reevaluating the state of humanity. Putting humanity first over money and power. I mean, see how many people are being killed by the state, and state-related violence, and also on the street, or created by the state. Every problem in society today is created by the state, because the state is the one running these societies. So there's nowhere to run for the state. There's no peace for the wicked, for anyone, for the state or for the population. We need to really learn our cultural values. BBI proposal call for broad expansion of the legislative and executive branches, including the creation of a prime minister with two deputies and an official leader of the position, reverting to the selecting cabinet ministers from among the elected members of parliament, the establishing of up to 70 new constituencies, in addition of up to 300 unelected members of parliament under an affirmative action plan. All these reforms developmentally may work, but ultimately society will fail if we don't look at the cultural economic component of progress. Thank you for watching this video, for supporting this channel, and leave a comment below and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you watch this far, share with family and friends. Be an advocate for this program. Ultimately, in May 2021, the Kenyan High Court ruled that the BBI constitutional reform effort was unconstitutional because it was not truly a popular initiative, but rather an effort of the government. So it was actually a system which undermined the constitution. Back to square one, the court sharply criticized Kenyatta for the attempt laying out ground for his being sued personally or even impeached, though the parliament which had passed the BBI was unlikely to do that. The ruling was seen as a major defeat for both Kenyatta, soon to leave office, and Odinga, expected to seek the presidency, but a boon to the Odinga's future presidential election rival Ruto. On the 20th of August 2021, Kenyatta's Court of Appeal Kenya's Court of Appeal then upheld the High Court judgment of May 2021, which was appealed by the BBI Secretariat. Let us look at Ruto's presidency. In August 2022, Deputy President William Ruto narrowly won the presidential election. He took 50.5% of the vote. His main rival, Raila Odinga, got 48.8% of the vote. On the 13th December 2022, William Ruto was sworn in as Kenyan 5th president. God bless Kenya, because at least they got somebody to rule the country. We are going to look at the geography of Kenya. Going from politics to geography. Geography actually represents the wealth of the nation. What rainfall we have, the size of the country, the location of the country, and this is to prove that Kenya is one of the richest countries in the world. This material is to prove that fact, and also it has a potential, but also has a development such that there should not be the cost of living crisis saved for the poor management that is produced by capitalism. And the medicine there is to revisit our cultural economy, but in the short term we need to change to improve our public sector, which is actually to mitigate the incident of violence, economic violence, and also political ignorance, we need to actually strengthen our public sector and public service to provide schools, healthcare, energy, food, housing, public transport, and protecting the environment. These should not be left in the hands of the private companies, because private companies only do businesses. Development for them is actually profit into their pockets, and they don't give their money to people because they're so culturally bankrupt. They are so ignorant culturally. They just believe that when they get their money, they should actually help the poor. So it is a duty of the government to now intervene as the constitutional caretaker of the country to actually speak peacefully to the super rich. If they can give some of their money to the government or give it direct to community organizations like NGOs, which are actually community based within respective African countries or any other country of the world, which actually are to provide welfare in terms of education, food production. Like in Africa, community groups should be the one farming, with family members, with ordinary people actually being members of these community organizations, which are funded by the government internally and externally. The global government should also, the IMF and the World Bank should give money directly or indirectly, or if the government is that corrupt, they should vastly bypass the government and deal with NGOs in Africa, which are actually owned by Africa. It is not necessary to bring foreign NGOs into Africa. The Africans should be supported by training, technical training to manage and deliver within every NGO and CBOs in Africa. The NGO means non-governmental organization. These are civil instrumentation. They are charities and with powers to actually produce wealth and developing land and all the other state infrastructure. And CBOs actually smaller than NGOs. They are the same, but except they are different in sizes. CBOs are actually community-based organizations, which are actually the third sector. They are charities which should be running social economy in Africa and also in the West, in the East. The same model should apply for the short and medium term, but long term we need to revisit our culture so that we produce a holistic society to address peace issues. But now to address peace issue, including the cost of living crisis problem, we need to really strengthen, if not statutorily, but also, if it is not statutorily, then at least in terms of policy, soft policy, in terms of creating civil instruments within community-based programs and organizations under NGOs and CBOs across the globe, but particularly in Kenya and Africa. Yeah, this should be done now. The process should be done now at policy level, at a political and economic level, to mitigate the incidence of poverty and to start a process of getting Africans, especially Kenyans, out of poverty, but also the rest of the world out of poverty. This needs to be done now. If we cannot do it through the public sector directly, statutorily, we can do it with contractually within charity organizations as a third sector. It is third sectoral programming to develop an economy, to focus on welfare system, employment, food production and distribution, storage and distribution, the same with energy and water, as well as healthcare, transportation, schools, and all the other factors like green economy and protecting the environment. These should be taken away from the government and given to the people on the grassroots, and the process needs to start now. And let's go back to Kenya to look at the wealth of Kenya, to look at its geography. Looking at something called a Köppen climate classification map of Kenya. At 580,367 square kilometers and 224,081 square miles, Kenya is the world's 47th largest country after Madagascar. It lies between latitude 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south, and the longitude of 34 degrees and east and 42 degrees east. This is where it is located, very conveniently located within the globe, and this location of Kenya actually tells the world that Kenya is potentially one of the richest countries in the world. From the coast on the Indian Ocean, the low plain rises to central islands, which are bisected by the Rift Valley, the Great Rift Valley, and fertile plateaus lie on either side around Lake Victoria to the east. Like I said, along the plateau, there are plateaus. Plateaus are actually hilly areas which are extremely wealthy, served by adequate rainfall. The Kenyan Highlands are one of the most successful agricultural production regions in the world, in Africa, so to speak. I would argue also in the world. The highlands are the site of the highest point in Kenya and the second highest peak on the continent, Mount Kenya, which reaches to a height of 5,199 miles, 17,057 feet, and is the site of glaciers. Mount Kilimanjaro, 5,895 meters, so to speak, and our 19,341 feet can be seen from Kenya to the south of the Tanzanian border. Let's look at the climate. These are all factors of geography indicating whether or not the continent is rich. Kenya is very wealthy. Cost of living should not be there. Kenya's climate varies from tropical along the coast to temperature to temperate inland to arid in the north and northeast parts of the country. The area receives a great deal of sunshine every month. It is usually cool at night and early in the morning inland and higher elevations. The long rain season occurs from March, April to May, June. The short rain season occurs from October to November and December. The rainfall is sometimes heavy and often falls in the afternoons and evenings. The climate change is altering the natural pattern of the rainfall period, causing an extension of the short rains, which has begat floods, and are reducing the drought cycle from every 10 years to annual events producing strong droughts such as the 2008 and 2009 Kenyan drought. That is also a crisis produced by nature, which actually, when it occurs, the government should intervene, or communities organizations like NGOs and citizens to intervene to provide emergency support. Normally, it is actually shelter in these circumstances, and food and water and clean water to prevent diseases, epidemics and things like that. It can be done if there is a political and actually cultural willingness. And it needs to be done now to start changing the global landscape and also countries like Kenya. The temperature remains high throughout these months of tropical rain. The hottest period is February and March, leading into the season of the long rains, and the coldest is in July. The coldest is in July until mid-August. Climate change is posing an increasing threat to global socio-economic development and environmental sustainability, and this can be done by the government more than I've seen the level of negligence within the private sector now left to actually protect the environment. They cannot do that because the only thing they know to do is actually create wealth, maximize profit for themselves, put it in their pocket. And they are, in that context, they are some of the most immoral groups ever created by capitalism. The super rich, the multimillionaires, the multi-billionaires who run big businesses. The ones running small and medium businesses are actually suffering. They are closing down now. And this is why I say these are also counted as people who are poor, and also people who work for a living depending on the super rich to create jobs for them, and if they cannot access it, they instantly become poor. And so to speak, we need a system which actually community-based NGOs and CBOs which are actually run by local people in Kenya, Africa. We don't need foreign NGOs because they don't understand our situation. They bring politics and corruption into Africa. In as much as they bring help, they bring more confusion and problem in Africa. We need to actually understand where Africa is. So African problems should be solved by African people. The idea of corruption is fake, because if foreign NGOs can operate in Africa without actually fearing corruption, then African NGOs and CBOs can also operate while dealing with corruption. You see, the world should come together to support Africa, to support Kenya, to support Europe and all the continent of the world in favor of the majority of the population who languishes in poverty. That's why there is a cost of living crisis. That's why I'm speaking. And I'm also speaking because of belief. We can do this, we can change and bring change and the better world and more peaceful world. So, what do we say? Developing countries with low adaptive capacity and high vulnerability to the phenomenon are disproportionately affected. I've already mentioned this several times. Climate change in Kenya is increasingly impacting the lives of Kenya's citizens and the environment. This is across Africa and in many ways across the globe, especially the poorer regions of the world. Climate change has led to more frequent extreme weather events like droughts, which last longer than usual, irregular and unpredictable rainfall, flooding, and increasing temperatures. The effects of these climate changes have made already existing challenges with water security, food security, and economic growth even more difficult. Harvest and agricultural production, which account for about 33% of total gross domestic product (GDP), are also at risk. The increased temperatures, rainfall variability in arid and semi-arid areas, and strong winds associated with tropical cyclones are combined to create favorable conditions for the breeding of migration of the pests. An increase in temperature of up to 2.5% by 2050 is predicted to increase the frequency of extreme events such as floods and droughts. We're going to look at wildlife in Kenya and environmental issues in Kenya. These are wealth is impacted by nature and society. Kenya has a considerable land area devoted to wildlife habitats, including the Masai Mara, where blue wildebeest and other bovids participate in large-scale annual migration. More than 1 million wildebeest and 200,000 zebras participate in the migration across the Mara River. The big five game animals of Africa, that is the lion, leopard, buffalo, rhinoceros, and elephant, can be found in Kenya and in the Masai Mara in particular. Masai Mara has done very well in the way of publicity and significance. A significant population of other wild animals, reptiles, and birds can be found in the national park and game reserve in the country. The animal migration occurs between June and September, with millions of animals taking part, attracting valuable foreign tourism. 2 million wildebeest migrate a distance of 2,900 kilometers, 1,802 miles from the Serengeti in the neighboring Tanzania to the Masai Mara in Kenya, in a constant clockwise fashion, searching for food and water supplies. This Serengeti migration of the wildebeest is listed among the 7 natural wonders of Africa. Kenya in a 2019 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score of 4.2 per 10, ranking it 133rd globally out of 172 countries. Let us look at the government of Kenya, government politics, politics of Kenya. Kenya's third president, Mwai Kibaki. Kenya is a presidential representative democracy, a republic with a multi-party system. The president is both the head of state and head of government. Executive power is exercised by the government. Legislative power is vested in both the government and the National Assembly and the Senate. The judiciary is independent of the executive and the legislature. There has been growing concern, especially during former President Daniel Arap Moi's tenure, that the executive was increasingly meddling with the affairs of the judiciary. This is common in Africa and across the globe. Kenya has the highest levels of corruption according to the Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index (CPI), a metric which attempts to gauge the prevalence of public sector corruption in various countries. And public sector corruption is measured, whereas private sector corruption is not measured. And this is actually the problem, because there is one-sided. The corruption in the private sector is the same, perhaps worse than the corruption in the public sector, except it's not measured. It has to be measured because the government do not want to regulate the private sector in the name of freedom. But freedom without cultural education is a form of despotism. It's a very dangerous thing to be allowed to occur. And this needs to change, and government needs to regulate big businesses and also small and medium businesses actually. And if they are extremely rich, some of their wealth should be taken by force by global government and given to projects which actually support welfare to the majority of the population, because you see, capitalism has given nearly 80% of the wealth into the hands of only 10% of the wealth, including land. Land is barely mentioned in developed countries, but this is actually a failure and also a form of concealment because there is a colluding of those in power, political power and economic power, to work as criminal enterprises, criminal in the sense of morality, not legality, because the law actually operates different from morality. We are free to speak as moral human beings, to call people criminal, but there is no evidence that legally they are criminals. But you know, this expression allows you to see the filth, the dirt which has actually accumulated within power, ranking, power spaces, and this is due to cultural failure, failing to be respectful to humanity. That's why over 90% of the population are languishing in poverty in a world where no one, even in Africa, should be in poverty. I've said this again, I've said it before, I will be saying it again, but there are several rather significant developments with regard to curbing corruption from the Kenyan government. For instance, the establishment of a new independent ethnic and anti-corruption commission, EACC. These institutional and also policy changes, creation of institutions is okay, it's part of development. But if we do not understand the culture, we are going to work in vain. Our efforts, we are going to be going in circle and circle, and think we're going to get what. Look at the Supreme Court of Kenya, how it is built following general election held in 1997. The Constitution of Kenya Renew Act designed to pave the way for more comprehensive amendments to the Kenyan constitution, was passed by the National Parliament. In December 2002, Kenya held democratic and open elections, which were judged free and fair by most international observers. In the 2002 election marked an important turning point in Kenya's democratic evolution, in that power was transferred peacefully from the Kenyan African National Union (KANU), which had ruled the country since independence, to the National Rainbow Coalition (NOC), a coalition of political parties. Under the presidency of Mwai Kibaki, the new ruling coalition promised to focus its efforts on generating economic growth, combating corruption, improving education, and rewriting its constitution. Now, economic development can be achieved under capitalism very effectively. What will not happen is actually redistributing the product, the fruit of the country's labor to the hand of the many. What it does, it grows the economy, alright, but it concentrates the fruit of this growth to the hand of the few. Those who are already multimillionaires and multimillionaires get more wealth, and this is the rot you find at the capitalism. And I always say this over and again: we need to change the system. Either we bring back the public sector, which has already been closed down, to provide public service, or we create a system where non-governmental organizations, which are actually nation-based, owned by nation-states in Africa, in wherever, owned also by the community, the local, the indigenous community, like in Kenya. We need the communities in villages and in regions of Kenya to run Kenya-based NGOs and CBOs. Now, we need to do it now, and the money should come from the IMF and the World Bank, ring fence to develop these governments, which are actually soft, which are third sectoral, which are charitable, to provide welfare assistance across the globe. The model role across the globe to actually control the ravages produced by capitalistic system, which produce a lot of wealth and concentrate this wealth to be wasted by the super rich, multimillionaires and multimillionaires. That's impossible. It is a truth, it is a cultural failure, it's a policy failure, and it needs to be corrected sooner rather than later. And a few of these promises have been met. There is free primary education. In 2007, the government issued a statement declaring that from 2008, secondary education would be heavily subsidized, with the government putting all tuition fees. That is good to hear, but it needs to really be followed through by the World Bank and the IMF, which is actually tying the hands of African leaders, dictating how African leaders should run their countries. Corruption, yes, but solving the problem of corruption is actually the cultural issue, and it needs to be looked at, because there's corruption everywhere, except in Africa. The nature of corruption is slightly more risky in terms of dealing with what is a fragile civil and military security infrastructure found in Africa and found in Kenya in particular. And this should be really addressed culturally, but also in terms of policy, government policy, should be done as a global coalitional program and also production. The process needs to start straight away. Let's look at the 2013 election and new government, which actually election happening, general election happening in Kenya, under the new constitution, with President Kibaki prohibited by term limits from running for third term. Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta ran for office. He won with 50.51% vote in March 2013. He seems to be repeating this, but this is a political outlook we are looking at historical outlook, the way democracy was developed in Kenya. That was history. In December 2014, President Kenyatta signed a security laws amendments bill with supporters of the laws suggested was necessary to guard against armed groups. Opposition politicians, human rights groups, and 9 Western countries criticized the security bill, arguing that it infringed on democratic freedoms. The thing with the law is actually not to produce democracy. Democracy is about freedom, and the law is about force and rule. People are so mistaken to think that the law is actually there to bring democracy. No, the two are different. The law is actually there. It's a force it's a brute force actually, it's brute civil force which actually impose its wills on the population. As long as there is law, there will never be freedom. People need to understand this. The only thing to bring freedom is actually freedom itself. Democracy actually is achieved, which is a tool for freedom. Then we will achieve freedom, and incidental freedom. Democracy is actually sits on the rule of law, and if that happens, democracy will not really produce freedom until we go away from there and achieve educational estate. Divorce from politics, divorce from law, divorce from any. Society should be run by the product of educational enlightenment. A citizen know what is right and wrong and actually do the right thing without being told. The law is there to tell citizens what they should do and what they should do, which is actually a form of oppression. The law is oppressive because people have not learned to do what is right independently. People are immature in terms of society. They do not know what they are doing, so the law tells them what to do. That is the function of the government, which sits on the basis of the rule of law. Democracy sits on the same principle of the rule of law. So to think that you are going to be free because democracy exists is false. Freedom comes by education, by enlightenment. People begin to mature into communities of individuals, of societies who do not need to be told what to do. There are a cacophony of laws which are actually globally. You cannot be free when they are laws. You know it more. What are the police doing on the field? What are the military doing in the country? If you think there is freedom, no peace for the wicked. We need to learn our culture. Our culture is our route to enlightenment of freedom from the tyranny of law, of tyranny of democracy. Our democracy will actually evolve from within us, not from without. We grow up to be mature adults, culturally educated, respecting humanity, doing what is right for humanity, channeling our effort in the product of our effort to bring peace. And that is what I mean by cultural economy, which is actually the opposite of the developmental economy, which sits on the basis of legal infrastructure, the rule of law, and democracy, and all those sorts. As Carol with Kenya, if you watch up this far, subscribe to this channel, support it, and you can comment below. Thank you so much for being with me up to this stage. If you haven't, maybe hopefully we'll meet again. You will come and watch the video again. It's very important. It's a very interesting video. It may not sound as good as it should be, but information in it are actually critical. This is very important. So people, you listen, you watch these videos. The government of the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and France also collectively issued a press statement cautioning about the law's potential impact. Through the Jubilee Coalition, the bill was later passed on the 19th of December in the National Assembly under acrimonious circumstances. We are going to look at foreign relations of Kenya. So we are looking at iconical characters like Barack Obama, President Barack Obama in Nairobi, July 2015. The son of Kenya, no less, the Jaluo of all Jaluos, Kenya has close ties with the ex-fellow Swahili-speaking neighbors in the African Great Region, Great Lake region. Our relations with Uganda and Tanzania are generally strong as the three nations work toward economic and social integration through common membership in the East African community. Relations with Somalia have historically been tense, although there has been some military coordination against Islamist insurgents. Kenya has good relations with the United Kingdom. Kenya is one of the most pro-American nations in Africa and the wider world. With International Criminal Court trial dates scheduled in 2013 for both President Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto related to the 2007 election aftermath, US President Barack Obama chose not to visit the country during his mid-2013 African trip. Embarrassing. With International Criminal Court trial dates scheduled in 2013 for both President Kenyatta. So to speak, later in the summer, Kenyatta visited China at the invitation of President Xi Jinping after a stop in Russia and not having visited the United States as president. In July 2015, Obama visited Kenya, the first American president to visit the country while in office. The British Army Training Unit Kenya Batu is used for the training of British infantry battalions in the arid and rugged terrain of the Great Rift Valley. Additional information. Let's look at the armed forces of Kenya Defense Forces. The emblem and also forth. The Kenya the defense forces, the armed forces of Kenya, the Kenyan Army, Kenyan Navy, the Kenya Air Force compose the National Defense Forces. The current Kenya Defense Forces were established and its composition laid out in Article 241 of the 2010 Constitution of Kenya. The KDF is governed by the Kenyan Defense Forces Act of 2012. We'll talk about the rule of law in every sector of society. The President of Kenya is the Commander-in-Chief of all the armed forces. The armed forces are regularly deployed in peacekeeping missions around the world. Further, in the aftermath of the national election of December 2007 and the violence that subsequently engulfed the country, a commission of inquiry, the Waki Commission, commended its readiness and adjudged it to have performed its duty well. Nevertheless, there have been serious allegations of human rights violations, most recently while conducting counter-insurgency operations in Mount Elgon area, and also in the district of Mandera Central. Kenya's armed forces, like many government institutions in the country, have been stained by corruption allegations. This is part of the public sector, and therefore corruption will flow naturally or as it is reported. Because, potentially, if there's corruption in the public sector, let us also expect corruption in the private sector as society evolves to change from the public to private sector. Because of the operations of the armed forces being traditionally cloaked by the uniqueness, by the ubiquitous blanket of state security, corruption has been hidden from public view and thus less subject to public scrutiny and notoriety. These has changed recently. In what are, by Kenyan standard, unprecedented revelations in 2010, credible claims of corruption were made with regard to recruitment and procurement of armored personnel carriers. Further, the wisdom and prudence of certain decisions of procurement are being publicly questioned. Look at administrative divisions of Kenya, the counties of Kenya, and divisions of Kenya. This is administrative infrastructure. Kenya's 47 counties. There's 47 counties. Kenya is divided into 47 semi-autonomous counties that are headed by governors. These 47 counties form the first order divisions of Kenya. The smallest administrative units in Kenya are called locations. Locations often coincide with electoral wards. Locations are usually named after their central village and towns. Many larger towns consist of several locations. Each location has a chief appointed by the state. Constituencies are an electoral subdivision, with each county comprising a whole number of constituencies. An interim boundaries commission was formed in 2010 to review the constituencies, and in its report, it recommended the creation of an additional 80 constituencies. Previous to the 2013 election, there were 27 constituencies in Kenya. Let's look at human rights. Human rights in Kenya, the LGBT rights in Kenya, and the human trafficking in Kenya. Homosexuality acts are illegal in Kenya and punishable by up to 14 years in prison, though the state often turns a blind eye to prosecuting gay people. According to a 2020 survey by the View Research Center, 83% of Kenyans believe that homosexuality should not be accepted by society. While addressing a joint press conference together with President Barack Obama in 2015, President Kenyatta declined to assure Kenya's commitment to gay rights, saying that the issue of gay rights is really a non-issue, but there are some things that we must admit we don't share. Our culture, our societies don't accept. In November 2008, WikiLeaks brought wide international attention to the Cry of Blood report, which documents the extrajudicial killing of gangsters by the Kenyan police. In the report, the Kenyan National Commission on Human Rights, KNCHR, reported this in their key finding, stating that the forced disappearances and extrajudicial killings appeared to be official policy sanctioned by the political leadership of the police. Let's look at the economy of Kenya. Kenya's macroeconomic outlook has steadily posted robust growth over the past few decades, mostly growth from road, rail, air, and water transport infrastructure projects, as well as massive investment in information and communication technology. Now, when we talk about growth and development, these are actually privately led, maybe partially publicly led. But like I said, if something is now, if it is in the hands of the public and it is an essential public service, it is wrong, because the private company are going to close it down if it doesn't make profit. So this transformation should be looked at, and every essentials of the country should be provided either by the government or by the community themselves, not the private sector. However, much of this growth has come from cash flows diverted from ordinary Kenyan pockets at the microeconomic level through targeted monetary and fiscal measures, coupled with poor management, corruption, massive theft of public funds, over legislation, and ineffective judicial resulting in diminished incomes in ordinary households and small businesses, unemployment, underemployment, and general discontent across multiple sectors. Kenya ranked poorly on the Fragile State Index at number 25 out of 178 countries ranked in 2019, and is placed in the alert category. In 2014, the country's macroeconomic indicators were rebased, causing the GDP shift upward in low-middle-income country status to low-middle-income status. Despite government assurance to the contrary, the Kenyan government is currently broke and struggling to meet its financial obligations. Junior government employees at both national and county levels are the hardest hit and have not received their monthly salaries, benefits, and deduction for up to 6 months or more. This is consistent to what I said earlier, that employment should be in the hands of the public, not the private. And this is actually a problem created by privatization of the public sector, which is actually to provide welfare. Employment is a welfare instrument of society, and that is what I've been saying. This is what's happening in Kenya, this is what's happening in Africa, this is what's happening across the globe. There is conflicting data on the state of the economy from different government agencies, with official data not reflecting record inflation and very high prices of goods and other basic commodities. Probably there is also some corruption, the effects of corruption in feeding the figures here and there. Kenya has a human development index (ADI) of 0.555 medium, ranks 145 out of 186 in the world. As of 2005, 17.7% of Kenyans live on less than £1.25 a day. That is poverty. A developmental context. In 2017, Kenya ranked 92nd in the World Bank. In the World Bank, ease of doing business rising from 117 in 2016 out of 190 countries. So it's not easy to do business. That's the report. What the report says. So they want more privatization, which is a good thing. But it's a bad thing also for the majority of the population, because they're going to be poor and poorer if the government actually privatizes the public sectoral element of society. The important agricultural sector is one of the least developed and largely inefficient, employing 75% of the workforce compared to less than 3% in the food secure developed countries. Kenya is usually classified as a frontier market or occasionally an emerging market, but it is not one of the least developed countries. The economy has seen much expansion, seen by strong performance in tourism, higher education and telecommunications, and decent post-drought results in agriculture, especially the vital tea sector. Kenya's economy grew by more than 7% in 2007, and its foreign debt was greatly reduced. This changed immediately after the disputed presidential election of December 2007, following the chaos which engulfed the country. Telecommunication and financial activity over the last decade now comprise 62% of the GDP. 22% of GDP still comes from the unreliable agricultural sector, which employs 75% of the labor force, a characteristic of other developed economies that have not attained food security. A small portion of the population relies on food aid. Industry and manufacturing is the smallest sector, accounting for 16% of GDP. The service industry and manufacturing sectors only employ 25% of the labor force, but contribute 75% of GDP. This is because of technology and other factors. Like I said previously, the economy may be performing perfectly, but employment may actually be at zero in operational terms and performance terms. That means technology is certainly overrunning the economy, which is a good thing. Except if people are excluded in the process because of capitalism, where the capitalists only think of money making and not really looking after people, then the government should intervene. Because for the 90% of the population who are excluded, they will have been excluded entirely if employment stops 95% of the population will be excluded immediately, because employment is the only source of welfare to include the population into employment if they work for a living. But if they are actually multimillionaires who are investors in private businesses, they don't really, they're included by default. They own technology, they own the world, they own the world resources, but they are not going to give their wealth for free because of cultural failure. And that means the government should be culturally educated beginning from now, so that it can actually intervene to care for the majority of people who would be included because of the changes. And Kenya also exports textiles worth over $400 million under AGOA. Privatization of state corporations like the defunct Kenya Post and telecommunication companies, which resulted in East Africa's most profitable companies, Safaricom, has led to their revival because of massive private investment. These private investments into public infrastructure are actually achieved by loans, a credit system, which is either is granted by the state. So indirectly, it is the state which actually finance these private companies to provide public services. As of May 2011, economic prospects are positive, with 4 to 5% GDP growth expected, largely because of expansion in tourism, telecommunications, transport, construction, and a recovery in agriculture. The World Bank estimated growth at 4.3% in 2012. Kenya trends in the Human Rights Development Index. Kenya trends in the Human Development Index. Human Development Index 2017 and 2010. In March 1996, the presidents of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda re-established the East African Community (EAC). The EAC's objectives include harmonizing tariffs and customs regimes, free movement of people, and improving regional infrastructure. That's the purpose of globalization. Worlds without border, no tax restriction, no immigration restriction. That's the future of globalization. It's beginning in East Africa, but in Africa, no. In March 2004, the 3 East African countries signed a customs union agreement. Kenya has more developed the financial services sector than its neighbors. The Nairobi Securities Exchange (NSE) is ranked 4th in Africa in terms of market capitalization. The Kenyan banking system is supervised by the Central Bank of Kenya (CBK). As of late July 2004, the system consisted of 43 commercial banks, down from 48 in 2001, and several non-bank financial institutions, including mortgage companies, full savings and loan associations, and several power foreign bureaus. We're going to stop this video here. Next time we meet to discuss Kenya and the cost of living crisis. We're going to look at tourism in Kenya. What we have been seeing to demonstrate that Kenya has a lot of natural potential and natural infrastructures, and also developmental infrastructure enough to prevent the cost of living crisis. And also there are so many dynamics in society, the society of Kenya, reminiscent of what we find in the rest of Africa and across the globe, continentally and globally. These, I believe, has pointed to the deepening and strengthening of capitalism, which is the cause of the cost of living crisis, because of poverty, because the capitalism has concentrated wealth from the hands of the majority into the hands of the few, which is its nature. The capitalists only think of making money for themselves. They don't do charity. They don't give money to other people. Their charity is also designed to accumulate wealth, which they control. It's about controlling power and wealth and excluding the majority or population from accessing wealth is literally, and that's why there's a cost of living crisis, there's a wealth in poverty, which over 90% of the population are facing across the globe. And this needs to change by revisiting our culture, learning new ways of thinking, beliefs, and coexisting in the world. And that is the way to bring peace. Otherwise, there will be no peace with the wicked. There's a lot of wickedness. The cost of living crisis is evidence for wickedness by those in power, in the private sector, in the government, which is actually closing down the public sector globally. There is an agenda, a global agenda in Kenya, inclusive, the rest of Africa included. They are privatizing the public sector, which will provide income in terms of employment, which would provide welfare benefit in terms of money to those who are not working, those who are sick, those who have no access to food, energy, and water, housing, healthcare, education. This is changing, it's shutting down. People are going to be left to earn. This is not an empty threat. This is the real government is telling people everywhere in the world to take responsibility for their life, but they are wrong because they are controlling the world resources, and they cannot ask people who have nothing to take care of themselves. The government took away your country, they took away our country by force, and now they turn around and say, they have given our wealth, they were distributed world resources among themselves, the few, and now they're turning around to say, we don't want you anymore. This is to stop, because otherwise there will be no peace with the wicked. There's so much wickedness. It has to stop by visiting our country economy, change the way we think. And thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the notification bell for new videos. I will be posting videos until the end of times. And thank you YouTube, and thank you for my fans for your support. I've subscribed.